Hello and welcome to the Trauma Treatment Collective vlog. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about telemental health with trauma clients, and we're going to be talking about 3 tips you can use to help you to be successful with providing telemental health amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I wanted to just chat with you a little bit about 3 things that I have found to be really helpful as I am transitioning clients on to telemental health. Most of my clients have experienced telemental health here or there due to a sick child or something like that, and me having to work from home. But I have a day where I dedicate 3 of my slots to just telemental health. But for the most part, I was meeting with my clients outside of my home in my office setting. And so I've been transitioning clients solely to telemental health, looking at treatment goals, looking at where clients are in their process, and thinking through what are the best ways for me to meet my clients' needs, keep them moving forward in their treatment goals. But also recognizing that this is a different platform for some of them, and also looking at their ability to maintain stabilization and what it's like for them to do the work when we are not in the room together. So I'm going to offer you 3 tips that I think might be great things for you to consider when you are looking at telemental health, looking at your caseload, thinking through how do you continue to move your clients forward. So the first one is slower is faster. And when I say slower is faster, I'm really thinking about the process and taking clients through it. And so you may have to move slower than you moved when you were in session, but really encouraging clients and having a conversation with clients to say, hey, when we are doing trauma treatment, it is slower, it's faster, and especially when we're doing it via telemental health, because you really want to take your time and really help clients to walk up to their trauma versus kind of jumping directly into their trauma. Because usually when clients jump too fast into their trauma, that puts them at a higher level of re-traumatization, of having an abreaction, or something kind of going awry in their treatment. So the more you can walk them up to their trauma and take step by step and let each of those steps kind of settle. And I'll talk a little bit about what that means in a minute. But letting each of those steps kind of settle, the better chance you have of really being able to, once a client gets to what we kind of call the most hot epicenter of their trauma, or zero, the T0 is what we call it in somatic experiencing, then it has less activation around it. It has less charge, because each step has kind of, you've taken a little bit of the steam off. If you think about a pot and just letting a little bit of that steam off, and then you take another step and you let a little bit more steam off, and you take another step and you let a little bit more steam off. And so by the time you open the pot, it doesn't explode. And so thinking about that when you're doing the work with your clients, really thinking about, okay, how am I walking them to their trauma versus just kind of letting them jump right into the hardest parts of their trauma or the most activating parts of their trauma, because that's going to put them at greater risk. And so we call that titration. A little bit in and let that settle, and then a little bit more in and let that settle. If you think about a scientist who has a little droplet, and they're kind of just dropping something in and letting it settle, that's really what you want to do with your trauma work. Is really thinking about, okay, how am I really breaking this down into little bite-sized pieces so that each of those pieces settle. One of the things you can do is lots of touching and going, is what I like to call it. So if you've been with me for a while in Trauma Treatment Collective, you may have heard me talk about this, but I think it's something that you really have to think a lot about when you're thinking about doing telemental health, is that touch and go. So I'm going to talk about something that's really hard, and then I'm going to get off of it. And I'm going to talk about something that's really hard, and then I'm going to get off of it. And so we're touching and going. And so you may see me in a session say, oh, okay, let's talk a little bit about what we were talking about last week. We ended with talking about this, and usually it's something that's got a little bit of charge to it, and so I'll kind of get them going with that, and then I'll say, oh, okay, let's take a little bit of a break. I may make it more overt and say, let's take a little bit of a break, or I may do it covertly and kind of just move the client away from something and be like, oh, you haven't talked about your dog lately, like how's your dog doing? Or I will orient them to something that's a resource to them. I will kind of direct their attention to something that feels really resourcing and kind of brings a smile to their face. Like if I have some people who are maybe older and have grandchildren and they really enjoy their grandchildren, I may say, hey, you haven't talked about your grandchild in a while. Like, how are they doing? And, those kinds of things. And so just really kind of taking a break from the hard work and talking about something that really feels good to them and bringing some of that into the system can really be helpful. And so what we call this in somatic experiencing with you, which I think is really helpful in a great way of thinking about trauma treatment, is pendulation. So we're swinging from one thing that's really hard to something that's really resourcing, and swinging back to something that's really hard, and then swinging back to something that's resourcing. And so that rocking motion really allows the client to be able to work at a pace that feels really good, and it's not just hard, like hitting it hard, which then causes activation in the system, which then causes some type of defense response, whether it be fight, flight, or freeze. And then they kind of get stuck in their old patterning, and then they're kind of up there with no hope of kind of getting down, and they have to ride that through. So pendulation, or touching and going, is really a nice way, and really bringing that into your telemental health can be really helpful in keeping clients moving in a pace that feels safe. Because I think that's the biggest thing, is like, what happens if my client has some, moment where they don't feel safe? I'm not there to support them physically in the room. And so that's a really great thing. And then my third tip is about us as practitioners or as providers of trauma treatment, really making sure that you're taking good care of yourself. And so I have really found that in these days, in these weeks that have passed, that I really have to make sure that I am doing that every day. I like to call it emptying my cup. And I've been talking to my clients about this, but I've been also trying to practice it in my own life, of really realizing that there is a lot of change. There's a lot of transition, whether transition is positive or negative, pleasant or unpleasant, however you want to look at it, it still creates activation. It still creates dysregulation in the system. And so I have been realizing that I have to check in with myself on a daily basis and do something that's regulating, or I have to co-regulate with my family members who are in my home, because we are really trying to practice social distancing. Or I co-regulate with my friends via video, or via phone, anything, or texting with my sister, or doing a video chat with my sister, like just figuring out ways to really kind of bring my system into a balance, and really kind of working on, okay, what am I doing to take care of myself? And so I cannot express more this in this time than any time, that self-regulation and taking care of ourselves and self-care is really important, because what we bring to the room, or what we bring to the session, because we're not in the room anymore, but what we bring to the session is really important when it comes to regulation, and it can really help your clients to really be able to move through this time in a way that's different if we're not regulated. If you're kind of low and depleted, then it's really going to be hard for your clients to resonate with that, and for them to find a place of regulation and to co-regulate with you, if you're not offering that. And so really I want to encourage you guys to definitely take care of yourself. I try to stay grounded in session. I have to raise my seat up a little bit so my feet don't touch the floor, because I'm short. I'm only 5'1". So my feet don't touch the floor. So now what I've had to do is put some books underneath my feet, because I find that me being connected to the ground is very settling for me. And so doing little things like that, making sure that your seat's comfortable, making sure that your environment is comfortable, making sure you're doing whatever you have to do to take care of yourself, so that you are grounded and present and really in a good space, so that will be helpful to your client when you're meeting with them. So those are my 3 tips. I'll go over them again very quickly. So number 1 is making sure that you are going slow and really trying to walk your clients up to hard parts of their trauma. So even if they're talking about present day stuff, this is something I didn't mention that just came to my mind and I want to throw it out. Even if they're talking about present day stuff that's really hard for them, helping them to either kind of back up off of that and talk about what was the morning like. So let's say something happened in the afternoon. What was your morning like? What was your day before that like? Just walking them back to anything that was pleasant, and then starting from there and walking them up to the really hard thing. And that may take a course of a couple of sessions. So really having a conversation with your clients and letting them know that, hey, we're going to be moving a little bit slower than what you're accustomed to. And it may feel a little tedious, but here's why I'm doing it. And then also the second tip is making sure that you're touching and going. So doing a lot of rocking back and forth between hard stuff and resources, hard stuff and resources. So really stopping the work and doing some self-regulation, if that's what you find that's really great for your client, or just moving them away from hard conversation to something that is a little more pleasant, like I talked about the grandchildren, or about their dog, or about something that's really resourcing for them. And then the third tip that I will offer is making sure you're taking good care of yourself and doing self-regulation. I'm going to put a link in the comment section or the description section of this video. I am hosting weekly on Sundays I haven't decided the time yet, but if you click the link, it will be there. I'm actually videotaping this a little bit before it actually is going to be released. But on Sundays, I'm going to be hosting some self-regulation and co-regulation kind of group work that we'll be doing for 20 to 30 minutes. So we're not going to stay long. We're just going to hit it and quit it. But just, it's a way for me to hold myself accountable, but also invite other people in to that process to really encourage us to take care of ourselves and really live out what we're trying to teach our clients, to make sure that we're also living it out. So we'll just meet via Zoom for a couple of months, or a couple of weeks. We'll see how it goes and just see. And so yeah, click the link if you're interested in joining us. I'd love to have you. I'd love to be able to connect with you in that way. Again, it's just going to be 20 to 30 minutes of co-regulation and self-regulation, just practicing skills. I'll lead it, or I'll have a guest in who will lead us through some different skills to help us to be able to just take good care of ourselves so that we can take good care of our clients. So hopefully you will join. Hopefully this is helpful for you. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me a comment or DM me on social media. If you're not following the Trauma Treatment Collective on Instagram, it's Trauma Treatment Collective. Also, there's a free Facebook group. I'd love to have you in there called the Trauma Treatment Collective. So those are definitely ways that you can connect. Please feel free to share this with other colleagues and let them know that there's a resource for them and working specifically with trauma treatment clients during this time. I want to be supportive, and I want us to be supportive as a community and just kind of get around each other. There's lots of new ideas being shared in the group, resources being shared in the group on Facebook. So definitely get involved. Check out the Facebook group if you have not been on it in a while. I know sometimes I will kind of wander away from groups and then when I need it, I'll go back. So you might find some really great things in there now. So have a great rest of your day. Take care and be safe out there, and I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.